And welcome. This is Angela. So today I'm going to share a little backstory to the current state of events of human consciousness, which for some of you may be looking at the world right now and thinking it's a bit strange, it's a bit crazy. And I find that feeling that our world has gone crazy, or the gods must be crazy, parallels the experience of when you're young, like when I was a teenager, for example, and you start to develop certain fixations. And I don't mean oral fixations or other fixations or addictions that we might pick up. But for example, in my case, when I was a teenager, I became fixated on I can't even say the word, Eleusinian Mysteries. And it was because I was studying Greek myth. And then later, as I studied more into ancient Greek rites, and I started to dance at home, I wanted to know what were these rites. And in my imagination as a teenager, reading the materials, there was no credible evidence. There's some really good books that are available out now that have gone into the evidence of psychedelics and these rites. But I think that puts a substance to the rites that avoids the whole context of the rites. So if you're watching this video and you've read the author's book on the psychedelics and the Eleusinian rites, Eleusinian, I can't say the word rites, you can put a comment. I'll look up his name because he's quite an interesting author. I just don't have it on the top of my head. And I haven't read the book yet because a part of me is resisting, because as a teenager, I had visceral experiences of what I fantasized that these rites were. And as a teenager, what I would do would put on the 1980s new romantic music, which was quite dramatic, and would embody what I thought were some sort of cathartic dance forms that would be performing for the gods. And these gods weren't necessarily the Greek gods. They were a range of divine beings that I seemed to think existed. I didn't have any training in that. That was just me being a teenager thinking that there were these divine beings that existed. And I had watched a few TV shows that had given me some insight into what they might be looking like. But subsequently, being an energy healer, I started to get other images of what these divine beings may look like. And there was a whole range of divine beings. So if you're a Star Trek person and you've seen 10 Forward, or in Star Wars where you have all of the different species, that's what I'm talking about, a range of different divine beings. But the divine beings that were connected to when I was dancing and fantasizing what these Eleusinian mysteries were not observing the dance in this physical world. They were actually in another realm, and they were observing from that realm the dances that were done in this world. So when I teach dance and world dance, a lot of the world dances are always connecting to heaven. If you look at all Indigenous cultures, all folkloric traditions, they have a relationship to the stars, to heaven, to the earth. And there is incredible love by even just having this body, being able to give thanks to the stars, to the heavens, to the deities for offering this opportunity to experience life. So in the dance, which I then later, after my teenage years, started to study more solidly from 21 years of age till now, in the dance, in all folkloric traditions, in Qigong, Tai Chi, even yoga, which is a movement form, there is always that connection to the heavens through this vessel of the body to the earth. It's a beautiful love relationship. However, being a teenager, there is that part of us that feels you're at the beginning of your life and you're not complete. And what I'm discovering now in our human experience is that we've got to a point as a species where we may have evolved to a certain point, but because of the nature of the wars and our inability to manage just basic problems in the world, there's a few, and perhaps even just in ourselves, we might feel loneliness or a sense of, meh, what's all this life about? You know, those feelings of existential meaninglessness of everything. Because we've evolved technologically or we're modern, but we don't have that deep love within us for this life, there's a mismatch. And I think we as a species are at that teenage stage where we're like, what's going on? My body's going through all these changes, and we need an obsession that's a healthy obsession. So today I would like to share about some of the madness behind my obsession and how it led me down this path from 13 years of age, trying to understand this very obscure ancient Greek rite. Why was I obsessed with this? I don't know. I just was. And for me, the dance was a way to move and express myself and the obsession. But until I actually got older, I couldn't remove that disquiet inside of me. So in the way I would do the dance as a teenager, what I understood from the Eleusinian Mysteries was that there was a path to spiritual greatness. Now, that greatness may not necessarily be academic or, as you see in the Olympic Games, there was physical greatness that was worshipped, and you can see in the philosophers, there was philosophical greatness. They also had an appreciation for mathematics and the stars and the way that everything was related in the universe. So what is the greatness? When I danced, because I was a teenager moving this through my body, for me, what I saw as the greatness of the species itself was to move beyond what we see now as the epitome of human greatness to being able to connect with other species in the whole solar system and the universe. And those species have a different consciousness, but they are all connected through life. And some of these species, they may have different intents or different ways of looking at life, but they're all connected through life. We all are alive. We're all experiencing life. We're experiencing, for me, it was the dance, moving energy through my body. And when I danced as a teenager, I knew that, but in my physical world, I had heaps of problems. I didn't like my body. I felt uncomfortable at home in my family. I didn't feel comfortable in my country. I felt different because I was ethnic in Australia. I had it on and on and on and on and on. But when I danced, I connected and I felt good. So subsequently, many years later, I started to really ask, what is it that people are looking for when they do spiritual work? Was when I started the Sufi movement work, I was 26, 7 or something, and I could feel that elixir of life when I danced. It was immediate, and they're still teaching today. It's the Sufi Foundation of New Mexico, Tarian, New Mexico. So they're still doing those classes. Adnan has passed on and his students are still teaching the classes, and it's palpable. It brings you into the moment. And many of you who do spiritual work, you understand the power of the moment. Being in the moment, this other universe wakes up. And that's what they're discovering in science now, that even at the cellular level or the atomic level, when you start to just look at it, you begin to see the nature of reality differently. It expands, and our science is now finding new things to see all the time. The nature of science is to keep looking because it's trying to understand more. It's bringing light to matter, as spiritual work does. So I discovered that moment, and it opened up the power of the moment. And then after the Sufi movement, I started to explore more dance, and I discovered that more of that moment opened us up to what other cultures might have to give insights into that moment. So as I was going, I was exploring how my connection to life and the universe through the dance was also mirrored to me through different cultural movement forms or through different healing modalities. And then I discovered that Ambrosia was one of the things in the yogic practices that was a aspect of the brain that got activated, and it's called Amrita actually, and it was an excretion actually that can be released in the body. So today, what's happened is that I've discovered also the Soma was a sacred ancient plant in the Far East, or more like India, that was used in enlightenment practices. It was a plant, and it was able to bring higher consciousness to the students that were working spiritually. And they were working spiritually for a specific goal, which was enlightenment. In the Eleusinian Mysteries, for me, that wasn't, at the time I started that, the questions were, what are the mysteries for? What's the end goal? And that answer was not answered until I discovered Soma, which is from a different region of the planet. And why I also started to explore how in the dance it's been important for me to experience all different cultural movement forms, because when you do experience different cultural movement forms, you can add more input into what is the end goal of maybe that specific cultural movement forms or humanity as a whole. Each culture has a piece, and each cultural dance gives a different flavour and feeling and a different sense of that connection of life to the self and to the body, to the heavens, to the gift of life itself. Having gone through different cultural dances, I started to get basically information, kinesthetic and feeling information. I started to feel the energy. And that was an important way for me to learn. I couldn't get this from academic research. I had to study through the body, through experiential learning, through dancing and feeling. And so what I discovered was that in the Soma, it was actually given in the Enlightenment traditions when the student was ready to elevate their consciousness. It does not mean that it only works on one chakra. It could be working on any part of your body. But it was given when the consciousness was ready. And that was a big key for me. What was the end goal of the Eleusinian Mysteries? It was to make you ready for something. But I didn't quite still know until just this year, really, what is it that the Eleusinian Mysteries were trying to prepare people to be ready for? In many of my practices, I'd looked at the passing over of life. How does someone pass over through death to the next experience and the afterlife? And that's all through ancient Egypt. They're obsessed with the afterlife. These are ancient practices that were there. So for a while, I thought maybe the Eleusinian Mysteries were an extrapolation of what ancient Egypt was working through. But it felt different to me. It felt different in terms of how the dances were described, how they were particularly done. A lot of the movement rites were done by women, and they were done through specific private practices. And it was also very heralded in the ancient world. So it was very highly respected. It was secretive. It was something that was done by the leaders. So politicians of those times would go to do some of the mystery rites, and then they weren't allowed to talk about it. So it was something very special and something very private. And I started to wonder, once I discovered Soma, which was very focused in its intent to raise consciousness for the purpose of enlightenment, it was a different feeling to the Eleusinian Mysteries, which wanted to tap into Ambrosia and the food of the gods, wanted to experience what it was like to be godlike. That was in the Eleusinian Mysteries. But what was the end goal? If it wasn't enlightenment, what was the purpose? Was it just to look at the world as the gods look at the world? For me, I thought for a while it might be to look into the afterlife and understand what is the afterlife. Not in those times, in the ancient times, they didn't debate whether there was an afterlife or not. They knew there was. They knew there were other realms. The gods, the Greek gods, lived. They were alive. They existed. They were real. They were living. They had lived before. They were currently alive when the humans were alive, which for me was my reality as a teenager as well. I saw a couple of things. I went, okay, these people are not physically on Earth, but I know they exist because I keep seeing them. And of course, I thought I was nuts. But after I started to get spiritual training, I started to realize that I was seeing divine beings in a form. They may not always be in that form, but I saw them in a form. And so the concept of the Eleusinian Mysteries started to make sense to me when I heard some of the researcher about that in his book and his YouTube videos has discussed how people were looking to understand the meaning of life in a way and what would be the highest outcome of life. So they may be powerful people such as politicians, and they would have had some sort of great level of success or prestige or recognition in their life, but that wasn't enough, which is very similar to people on the Enlightenment path. If you know Tolstoy or other writers, they express this great dissatisfaction with life. They have everything, and Buddha was the same. He had every riches that you could consider, and it wasn't what he was looking for. There was something else. So that was an important step, that realizing there's something else. And that's what we're going through now as a species. When we look at the world, we go, we're advanced technologically, but it's not really helping. There's got to be something else. That's a good step. So I understood from the Soma from the East that was about higher consciousness, focusing on enlightenment. But what about the Eleusinian Mysteries? Why would they, if you're a powerful person, you go through, you see maybe this other realm, or you go through the afterlife. And one penny dropped when the researcher mentioned that it was said that they may have done some substances and then being put into a certain state to experience something like a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience. So I'm going to pause here for a second to talk about the difference. So a near-death experience can be you're actually physically dying or clinically dead, and then your consciousness still has a life and it still gives you a story, and then you don't die, you come back, and that story then gets relayed. Maybe you don't tell anyone, but it was real. It's very real, and it usually has an impact on you. The psychiatrists and psychologists have said that anyone who has one does change. Their personality goes through a change. Out-of-body experience is when you may not be dying, but so you may be in an altered state, and then you actually go to what looks like another reality, a different realm. It could be a different part of Earth. It could be a different realm of the non-physical world, but you're not in your body and you're having an experience. So that's when I went, aha, now this sort of process to have an out-of-body or near-death experience would be to, for what end? Change the perception of the person. And remember, in ancient Greece, this was only for specific people. Either they were priests and priestesses who were initiated to practices, or they were leaders who people had assessed were at a certain level of intelligence, maybe, or consciousness, maybe, to undergo some sort of ritual practice of out-of-body or near-death experience, maybe with psychoactive substances, maybe not, to see other realms and then have their perception change. Now, Aldous Huxley has talked about the doors of perception through LSD, and he did active experiments on himself. And with Timothy Leary, they did great substance experiments, sometimes a little bit out of control. But it was all for the purpose of shifting the consciousness in the 1960s as well, and also the academic universe, to help that shift to a different way of looking at how we treat the human condition. So that dropped for me when the author mentioned that. But the thing that didn't work for me was the necessity of the psychoactive substance. Because of the dance, for me, knowing so clearly when I was a teenager, I was able to dance and start to connect to these, what I saw as beings from another realm. It was very clear to me I didn't do any psychoactive anything. And I was obsessed dancing every afternoon with the repetition of the dances and going into not trance-like states, but states where I was in this altered consciousness, I could say. I was still conscious, so I wasn't out of my body. I was very conscious, but I was able to connect to what I saw as other beings. And that's when the penny really clicked for me about Eleusinian Mysteries and the rites that were protected. They were protected because the regular person may look at it and start to say, this is nuts. And they also may not actually understand the sacredness of the ritual and the requirements for the ritual to be done in a certain specific manner. And their consciousness may be stimulated by psychoactive substances or other herbs, but that was not necessary if you engaged in certain practices and rituals. And this is what I have learnt through my teachers in India who work to give people enlightenment through processes that are gentle, no psychoactive substances, and also now through these events with Soma. They can be some free events, there's some paid events, they're all over the world. You can message me if you're interested in finding online events. There will be some more meditation-like events. Some of them are short, some of them are longer. Some of them are a sweeter or simpler in their vibration, like they're more gentle. For me, the Soma has been enormously gentle, which has been really important for me because I don't like being rocked by substances. I would never be able to do an ayahuasca thing or any of that stuff. It just wouldn't go with my nature. So for me, the gentleness of the Soma has been extraordinarily powerful and such a gift. So you can just message me wherever you find the video. I'll try to find the comments. And it was a joining of the dots of two ancient parts of the world for me in Soma that comes from the teachers in India now, to this mystery that as a teenager I had discovered and was obsessed with, kind of like the Holy Grail for me. And I even thought, well, maybe this Holy Grail that they talk about through all the mythical stuff was about that part of the heart flowering, which I do teach. The Grail is a chalice, which is actually connected to the cup of our heart. And that's what I teach in the dance classes. And I thought how all of that time ago as a teenager, I really wanted to know why are they doing this? Is it just as simple as dancing and feeling good? Because every time I danced, I felt better. And certainly for me, the path has been dance. It may not be for you. And if that is that simple, that we just come into a respect of all of the cultural traditions and what they're here to teach us. If something is a mystery, then maybe it was the Eleusinian Mysteries for a period of our time. This is one thing I've been contemplating. And now we have to understand from the traditions that we have now, what do we carry forward? As a dancer, I've been taught by the most amazing teachers, and I've been blessed to meet the most amazing people in my dance and healing path. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them, all of them. There's too many to name. As I go through my videos, I'll start naming them. And Adnan Sarhan was my Sufi master who initiated an extraordinary shift for me. And December next month, I'll be sharing more on the Sufi movement. And the other teachers who came from all different cultural practices and different countries, their traditions, and they lived in different countries as well, what it gave to me was seeing that at this time we're coming together in the human consciousness to see what, not just what unites us all, but to see what's that next level of higher consciousness in all of the work that we do, whether it's healing, whether it's financial, whether it's relationships. What is that next level of consciousness for humans? It's obviously, when we look at the world, that humanity is not at a great state. We're all hungry, like I was as a teenager, for answers. What can we do? What can we have that could be better than this? We know that something could be better, but we doubt that it's possible. And I had that as a teenager. I extremely doubted that I was capable of maybe manifesting a life of dance and connecting to those divine beings that I used to feel in the dance. And now I don't doubt it because it's very real for me. It's completely nuts to some people, but it's very real for me. And I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud to be able to have that bond with those divine beings when I dance. I don't necessarily see them, but I certainly feel them. And sometimes I actually get a download or an image. So our species needs that higher consciousness now, whether it's, you know, how you talk to your parents or how you talk to your family and children, or how you talk to animals, or how you talk to each other in the community. We all need it. We need the imagination that I had as that kid to think about, what do we really want? Because what we have now, we're dissatisfied with. It's clear. Everybody I talk to is a bit like, human species, yeah. So what can you be proud of in the future? What could be that next state of consciousness? Yes, I did watch Hair, the musical, and I'm part of the dawning of the age of Aquarius. I am built that way. But you can be your own way. You don't have to be an alternative lifestyle person or whatever you want. You have to turn on the imagination of what could be that higher state of consciousness. And when the doubts do come up, just allow it, see it, and continue that search for the next better human consciousness that we can be. It's here already. I know so many people now in our communities helping people, doing good stuff. We need to energize those people, and we need to come together, celebrate. And if you want to do that, we've got 3 amazing live in-person Soma events happening in Australia this December. December 1st, this Friday in Sydney, December 3rd in Perth, and December 8th in Melbourne. So you can check out the links. I've got those in the description. And just message me if you want to find out about any more Soma events that we're doing. It's to elevate our consciousness, to give you the dream, even if you don't think it's possible, to energize it. Because like me as a teenager, I didn't think it would happen, but now I'm living that dream and I pursued it. And I needed courage and I didn't have courage. But I was given that through all of my teachers, and we need to come together and start to encourage each other and fulfill that next level of the human consciousness, what we can be. It's right here, and we're ready to step forward, and we need to come together as well to celebrate that. So there is my obsession with the Eleusinian Mysteries. Maybe you have one too, you know, nothing sorted. And I'd look forward to hearing from you, and have a great week.